Leslie Grandy is an author, a speaker, and a CEO advisor helping organizations leverage creative thinking. Her newest book is Creative Velocity, Propelling Breakthrough Ideas in the Age of Generative AI. Welcome to the show, Leslie.
Thanks, George. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you on. Tell us a little about your personal lives, more about your work, and why you do what you do.
So, from a personal perspective, I live in Seattle, Washington, and have lived here on and off mostly for the last 30 years. I am married, and my husband and I love to travel, and that fuels a lot of my curiosities to go to new places and have new adventures. That's one of the things I think that's really been a hallmark of my personal life. I'm more likely to say yes than to say no to new adventures, and one of those is writing a book. So I thought I'd see how far that went, and so far so good. It's coming out in a couple of weeks, and I feel like the process itself was a real learning journey, regardless of where it goes from here and how many people I'm able to impact. I think for me personally, it was one of those new adventures. And it really kind of tied together sort of my own personal journey as well as my professional experience. And the why I do the work I do is I think primarily because I don't think I'm that unique. And I think I've learned a lot through my journey on how to express myself creatively and how to dispel the myths of creativity so I could do that. I think when I was younger, I believed like many people do, that either you're born creative or you're not. It's a genetic trait and it's not something that you can develop. And so I set down the path, like many people do, to take piano lessons and acting lessons and painting lessons. And my parents were very generous in helping me find my medium, but none of them were my medium. I had literally no talent and many instructors who would share that with me. And it was very disheartening for someone who wants to live a creative life not to find a medium and not to find the way to express oneself. And it took me till my late 20s to really appreciate what it meant to be creative, and that was in large part due to the people I had the good fortune of interacting with in my professional life, which really changed my thinking about what it meant to be creative. And when I saw these people operate in normal corporate jobs, not just in creative fields, imbuing everything they do with that creative spirit, that capacity to think of new ideas, fresh ideas, come up with solutions to unexpected challenges. I realized that was actually my superpower, the ability to try something new I hadn't done and figure it out and discern what's valuable and move forward in a way that allowed me to try and fail and learn some more and get better and smarter and more creative about how to approach the next new challenge. And I think that learning that creativity is a muscle that you build as opposed to a trait you're born with was a real epiphany for me. And it changed my thinking from being somebody who was able to do some artistic pursuit to somebody who could actually realize bold ideas and innovations.
Well, I think that that's all really cool. I don't think it's cool that you had teachers that were necessarily discouraging, and I'm sort of just kidding there. I'm sure that they
No, I
weren't,
know.
but
I just you can imagine when your student tries hard but just hits those bad chords in piano lessons after a while and after doing it for years, you can imagine how tiring that must be for certain teachers. And as much as they want to be encouraging, they realize you've hit a wall and they think they're doing you a better service rather than have you continue to pound your head against the wall. So I actually felt relieved in some ways because I could move on to the next medium and try another thing and see if that was something I had talent at.
I think that that's really very, very wise and kind of a mature thing. We don't have that much time, so it's
Yeah,
oftentimes better to just cut bait and move
totally,
on.
totally. I think that, if I had gotten enjoyment out of it, even when I was bad, that might have been different. But I knew I wasn't good, and it was frustrating not to find my lane, not to find the way to express myself. So I didn't take it as a surprise. Like I didn't think I had talent and they were telling me something I didn't know.
Yeah, how demotivating that probably is for a lot of people. And maybe they turn their back on creativity totally, and then all of a sudden we're grown-ups and we're in that
Yeah,
corporate environment. There's no time for this. I've got my gray
right.
suit and my white shirt on.
And a list of tasks that I have to do. And I think task lists are sometimes the antidote to creativity. And so in corporate America, we always have this list of things we need to get done and that we're measured by and that we have to accomplish in order to move the business forward. And I think in our obsession towards those lists and those routines and those responsibilities, we forget to leave time and space to allow ourselves to be more creative in how we approach those things, even how we tackle them, right? Rather than just moving to cross them off the list, we understand multiple ways that we can, face those challenges or tasks and perhaps do them in a way that would be more valuable or more meaningful than just getting them done.
Did you have a moment where you realized that that is a form of creativity?
Yeah, my first job in technology, I started in the film industry and I worked in the film industry for 13 years, but I wasn't in a creative function. I wasn't a director or a stylist or a camera person or a set designer. I was somebody who was an assistant director in the Directors Guild of America, which means you marshal troops around the set and you get things done, right? You figure out problems when they arise and you get things done so other creative people can perform their creative acts. That's how you think about it. And so for the longest time, I thought I was creative adjacent doing that. And I think when I moved into technology, I was really fortunate to have a boss at the first job in technology that I was hired for, which was an internship at a company called Visio, which made drawing and diagramming software back in the 90s. And my job was to create the IPO roadshow film for that company, which sort of seemed perfect because it was in the film zone and I got to do something I knew, but I was in a domain of technology where my curiosity was filled by going out and interviewing customers for this film and telling the story of this product. And through that, I recognized not so much my filmmaking capacity, but what they liked about me is they could just give me that project and I would get it done. And that I was someone who, if I was successful in the film industry, was probably successful because I could just figure stuff out. And that was a valuable trait to them. This was before product management was really a a well understood function with playbooks and things on how to use it. I was just using that function as a way to make it possible for other people to do their jobs, just like I did in the film industry. And that approach, that ability to sort of remove obstacles, look around corners, think big, was really valued there. And I think that moment of recognizing that I was a catalyst, a creative catalyst, I was someone who could actually not only bring out others' creativity, but make it meaningful in a way that was valuable to customers. And that a capacity to figure that out, to figure out what was necessary, what had to get done, was actually my creative superpower. And in that environment, I started to realize that's what differentiated me. Because who doesn't want somebody in a company that spends time figuring things out, that knows how to figure things out, that isn't afraid to go figure things out? My boss said at the time, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. And I used to get so angry at that because I thought if I knew, why would I be asking you? And if I and I'm new to the domain, so I probably wouldn't know as well as the experts what to do next. And his comment was, unless you're trying to figure it out, you're not moving the ball forward. You don't have to be right. You just have to come in right with having made the effort to look at the problem and think of what might be a solution. And then we have a much more productive conversation because I hear your ideas, you hear my ideas, and we could make something that maybe combines them both or that's entirely new after we discuss it. But if you just come with the problem, you're not contributing your half of what's possible creatively to achieve. So I think that was a real eye opener for me. And in that, it really not only influenced my leadership style, but I think it really showed me that doing doesn't just have to be taskless. It has to be doing the work to figure stuff out, right? Doing the things that make sure you've actually evaluated all possible options, not just the first one or the easiest one.
Yeah, as you're describing that, it makes perfect sense. Think about the scientific method is it demands creativity. You're trying different things and seeing what happens, and then you
And
try
finding
something
new
else.
things than the thing you expected. I think one of the fields where this is most true is pharmaceuticals. You go off thinking you're doing something to lower blood pressure, and what it actually does, right, is potentially deal with male erectile dysfunction.
Right?
And you're like, oh my God, that's a bigger solution than the one for blood pressure. And the blood pressure market's super crowded. I could have entered that market. That might have been the right thing to do or the easiest thing to do. But now that I have this new opportunity that I'm open to, I may be the first to market in that area.
Yeah. So not closing yourself off to that. And I wrote down Steve Jobs, I wrote down Einstein, and to not think of those two people as artists, I think is a mistake.
Totally. And, again, in my career, I had the good fortune of working at Apple. And during that process, I actually was interviewed by Steve. And I think this is exactly why this book was the natural thing for me to write. Forrest Gump kind of Zelig way. I found myself with or around creative people who really were able to inspire me to think about creativity differently. And when you think about Steve, he didn't invent the MP3 player. He just looked at the opportunity to make a killer version of it, right? That ultimately killed the MP3 player. And I think the idea of figuring out what needed to get done to make a better MP3 player wouldn't necessarily have been perceived as a creative act if it hadn't come from this master of constantly figuring things out and making disruptive products, right?
So just earlier this week, I was thinking about, I have three young kids, and I was thinking about what they need to learn to be competitive in the future. And it's certainly not being able to memorize something and then spit it back out because
Right.
we have this artificial intelligence, which has now come online. And tell me a little bit about how you're thinking we're squaring that circle between AI and creativity and the future of work, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic question. And also, with the underpinning of what do we teach the next generation in order to enter that world and continue to add value as humans, right? And I think there are a number of things that in retrospect, I didn't learn proactively, but I learned sort of reacting to my failures in the arts, which is resilience, right? You have to be comfortable with failure. You have to be comfortable with trying and learning and iterating and considering failure as a part of that journey, not as an end. I think that's a hard thing for kids to learn, right? Because they're measured by grades and they think about grades and they think about, getting into colleges and things as they get older. And so it's hard to think about resilience as a good thing and failure as a good thing. But I think that's one of the things we need to continue to teach children. I think curiosity. Um, I think as a child, you sort of feel like learning is a have to do, not a want to do moment. And so sometimes people sort of turn off their curiosity, their natural curiosity when they get out of school because they think that's the freedom that they have is that can stop learning. They don't have to continue to read or learn new things. And I'm always impressed with my friends who are parents who take their kids take a sabbatical and take their kids on a round the world trip or take their kids to live in another country to build both that resilience and also that curiosity, right? To break habits, to break routines, to be comfortable outside of the day to day with new things that might come with them that they hadn't expected. So I think that's another thing. Natural curiosity is really critical. And then I think the last one that I would really stress it, and probably one that I didn't learn early enough in my life, is emotional regulation. How to absorb and manage the feelings that you have. I think, we think about kids having temper tantrums, or we think about kids getting a timeout, right? Because they act out. But I think we don't teach children so much what happens in that moment they're feeling those emotions, how to manage them, because they could be more open to guidance or more open to dealing with the crisis they have if they felt that emotions are not just floodgates that open, but things that you can manage, right? That you can handle, that you can look at, and you can discern, oh, this is something I can control, or this is something that's happening to everybody, not just me. And then in that, navigate to a solution because you're not in hysterics. You're not in panic mode.
That makes a lot of sense. So I, like you, believe, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth. My belief is that we all started off as artists, and we all started off as creativity. And to your point, a lot of the school system beats the desire to learn and be creative out of you. And so you graduate and you're like, oh, I'm finally done. I don't need to do this junk anymore, which is a really sad thing. But I do. It could be in the form of poetry or painting or problem solving like we've been talking about. How do you coach people or tell people to foster their inner creative?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And I think the first thing is to recognize you have the capacity to do that and to see where you are, right? Where are you in your belief system? Do you have faith in your ability to solve problems? Do you believe that if you're handed a challenge you haven't seen before, you would know how to go about attacking it? Or do you run from those, right? Because I think that's the most important thing is to be aware of where you are at the moment. Because creativity is something that can be nurtured and grow. And it can also ebb and flow, right? We have different times in our life where it is probably a state of mind rather than any kind of trait that you actually can't access. If you have a family member with a health crisis, that may be all you can think about, and that may be the right thing for you to think about. And so maybe you're a little less able to regulate your emotions or focus on other alternatives because you're so focused in that moment on that crisis, right? That's legit. That's life. But when you're not in that moment, how do you reactivate it? And so the way to reactivate it is to know yourself, to know your triggers, to know the things that put you into a flow state, that give you the capacity to access your subconscious in a way that's actually positive and optimistic. Maybe it's take a long walk in nature. Maybe it's run a marathon. Or in my case, it's as simple as I get into the shower and all of a sudden I let go of what's happening outside of the shower and my mind is able to wander. And I let that happen. And I connect the dots to things that I probably couldn't if I just kept powering through the day. So I think understanding your triggers that you can get into a flow state that allows you to sort of reactivate your creative capacity. In the book, I interview people who were very influential across my career in accessing and nurturing my creative capacity. And each one of those people knows their trigger. Everybody, you could ask that question and everybody could tell you, this is what I do when I need to feel inspired and I feel blocked. It's not that they never feel blocked or that they don't feel they are creative. It's that they know they have to reactivate it and they can turn to those triggers in order to do that. And I think that's the one of the most important things. I think the other, as I said, I think the other elements of emotional regulation, curiosity, and resilience are also things that people can practice, right? And then they can learn. And so I think those are the things that if you understand what your triggers are and how you can activate yourself, and then you can have this sort of uh, comfort with the unknown and ambiguity and see the curiosity in that to let you get to that experience that you've never had before or to see something that you're not familiar with, then I think you're on the precipice of really building creative velocity because you know how to turn the switch and then you know how to actually open up the pipeline of ideas in the back of your head.
It makes so much sense. I think we've all had the experience, probably on a daily basis, of stepping into that shower, and I hadn't necessarily put it together that it's a very immersive experience.
And it uses just enough of
Literally.
your brain capacity to make sure you don't drown or slip and fall or burn yourself, right? You know, being completely not present. It uses just enough to free up your self-conscious. And that allows your mind to wander if you're willing to do that. If you're not obsessing and ruminating, if you're not letting your emotions, right, overtake your capacity to think, then the shower is as safe a place as walking in nature for finding great ideas.
So, but it could also be getting a nice cup of coffee, finding a
Totally.
comfortable chair.
Absolutely. I think it's setting and knowing and setting the conditions for your personal access to the creative capacity you have. What you might do and what 10 people I interviewed in the book do could all be different. But what's more critical is you know the trigger, you know the things, you know what gives you that place where your mind can relax For some people, it may even be the 20 minutes before they go to sleep, right? Where they're allowing sort of their thoughts to carry them. And I think whatever it is, it's being able to call upon that when you notice that you're blocked or unable to come up with a solution to a challenge that you're facing, either in your personal or professional life.
Has anybody said I like to do it while scrolling through social media and watching Netflix?
You know what's super interesting about that, though? I did look at, I really did a lot of research on research. I looked at what a lot of cognitive scientists have determined. And actually, scrolling TikTok and Instagram is a form of a flow state. It is actually something that can be measured in that it's just enough brain power for me to keep moving or stopping when something catches my attention, but it's not so much that it might not spark an idea that's in the back of my head when I pass something, right? When I'm scrolling by something, I'm like, oh, that's right. That's, about my dog. That's interesting way to think about my dog or, right. And so it might trigger something. I think for a lot of people, it is a decompression activity, and that is potentially a trigger for the flow state.
Yeah, which certainly makes sense. And I mean, one size does not fit all. So it's a function of figuring out what yours is. And then is there a recommendation that we have a way to capture these and a
Yeah,
system
so
for that?
some people are great at journaling. And I think this is a place where journaling really is valuable for self-awareness and also for pattern recognition. You maybe don't have to journal for the rest of your life, but while you're trying to reflect on what your triggers are or your moments of heightened creativity, keeping track of those things and the conditions can help you then intentionally create them.
Circling back on this idea that, and I think reality, that creativity is a superpower and it is a skill that or muscle that can be learned and then strengthened. And if not used, it will atrophy and weaken. Um, that one is benefited and well served to approach this with that in mind that this is a competitive advantage. This is something that will help me definitively in my career or my family, whatever avenues or arenas of life I'm interested in getting better at.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that uh, high performing teams in business have in common, right, is their open minded curiosity and their willingness to explore uh, unexpected places for possible solutions. One of the people that I interviewed for the book used to work at Reebok during the pump era. Remember when they had the
Yeah.
pump basketball shoes? And she was a designer, and she was telling me that in order to make the shoes have greater bounce, they studied fleas because fleas are able to jump more than 10 times their height. And so the idea is what mechanically or biomechanically makes that possible for fleas, and is there a way for us to manufacture a similar mechanics? And so who would think that was the place you would look? Well, only somebody was open-minded to consider there might be a solution in another domain, including nature, that I could learn something from and apply to my current situation. So I think that capacity, right, to be open to finding a solution in an unexpected place is the opportunity for innovation. And one of the greatest myths of creativity is that people think you have to be original to be creative.
Hmm.
And if you look at the patents that were issued from 1790 to 2010, 70% of those patents were the combination of two technology codes. The idea that we build upon the shoulders of others to create greatness is something that creative people know. Go back to my Steve Jobs example. He didn't have to invent the MP3 player to make the iPod, right? He just had to make it better. He had to stand on the shoulders of somebody who thought about digital music in a certain way. And then he thought, I can do better than that. And I can think about this differently. The same thing, with the phone. It's not that smartphones in some format, it didn't exist before the iPhone, but he found what was all wrong with them and invented, right, something that stood on their shoulders. He didn't invent cellular. He didn't invent Wi-Fi. He didn't invent Bluetooth. But the way all of those things, GPS, the way all those things came together is what was unique and original and innovative.
That's so powerful to hear that and to come to that realization because I bet that that does stop people from doing it. It's like, what original idea do I have, or are there any original ideas that are
How could I
left?
be Steve Jobs? I'm
Yeah.
not, I can't think like that. Well, but you can.
Yeah, I think that that's wonderful. Well, Leslie, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people learn more about you? How can they engage with you? And where can they get their copy of Creative Velocity, propelling breakthrough ideas in the age of generative AI?
My website is creative-velocity.com, and you can pre-order the book there. It comes out May 6th. I don't know when this podcast airs, so maybe that's
It'll
uh,
be live by then.
okay, perfect. And it'll be available at all major booksellers, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, you name it, chapters. It's available everywhere. And on my website, you can also learn about how to engage with me, whether it's through my Maven courses or through a corporate workshop. All of that's available on the creative-velocity.com site.
Excellent. Well, if you enjoyed as much as I did, show Leslie your appreciation. Share today's show with a friend who also appreciates good ideas. If you're part of an organization, consider consider bringing or doing a workshop on what we've been talking about today. Pick up your copy of Creative Velocity wherever you buy your books, but go to creative-velocity.com and learn more about what Leslie and I have been talking about. Thanks again, Leslie.
Thank you so much, George. It was a pleasure.
Until next time, remember, do your part by doing your best.